Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back to the section on 28, bottom of 28A. It's page 169, because we were all very confused last week about how to read this, and the confusion basically comes from the fact that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi had two different views of what happens on a day, what happens with the Ma'amad service, which is the non-priestly, the lay person's service during the week when the priests are in the sanctuary doing the daily offerings. And what happened, that there are certain times when on special days, the Ma'amad service is basically superseded because of these, whether it's a Hallel, because it's a special day, or a Musaf offering day, or a wood offering day. And it was very confusing the way Steinsaltz explained it. So I just wanted to go see if we can do this quickly through using the art scroll that explains that the problem is that we're dealing with two different understandings, because we had concluded that Rabbi Akiva's position was not the one that was not held. It was Rabbi Yossi's opinion, and then in which Rabbi Yossi basically said, when there's Hallel, there's no Ma'amad service at Shachrit. When there's a Musaf offering, there's no Ma'amad at Mincha. I hope I got that right, because it's kind of. And when there's a wood offering, there's no Ma'amad service at Nila. Let's just make sure I got that correct. Where was it? Well, in a second, we're just going to keep going because I don't want to take too much time doing this. But no, that wasn't it. Nope. Okay, I may have missed it, but all right, well, okay, all right, but I think I got it right. So here we go. So Mar Kashisha asked the question. There we go. All right. So Mar Kashisha asked, so the Mishnah taught on the first day of Tevet, there was no Ma'amad at all, because first of Tevet, it's the middle of Hanukkah. So there was Hallel recited. It was the Rosh Chodesh, so there was a Musaf offering. And it just so happened that on first of Tevet was one of the days of the year, there was a wood offering. So Mar Kashisha asks, what's the difference about Hallel that it overrides the Shachri service? Because Hallel is recited in the morning. But how is that different from the Musaf offering, that the Musaf offering didn't override the Musaf service? Because we had learned, again, that from Rabbi Yossi, or Ben Azai, who followed Rabbi Yossi, that the Musaf service didn't override the Musaf Ma'amad, it overrode the Mincha Ma'amad. At least that was our assumption. So the art scroll explains, he follows Rashi, he says, the Gemara assumes at this point that Rabbi Yoshua's ruling in our Mishnah, maybe it wasn't Rabbi Yossi, it was Rabbi Yoshua, that the Musaf offering overrides the Ma'amad service of Mincha, but the Ma'amad service of Musaf is usually held. That's our assumption based on this question. Rav Ashi then responds to him, now as the additional offering overrides the watch of the afternoon service, which it's not part of, obviously, so he has a different understanding. He understands that the Musaf offering also doesn't, the Ma'amad service also doesn't happen at Musaf. So both Musaf and Mincha do not have a ma'amad offering. That's his understanding. So then Mar Kashisha asks again, okay, no, this is what I meant. This is my question. Let me read it from the, this is what I meant to ask you. The Musaf offering should not suspend any ma'amad service other than its own. That was the question, is that why is the Musaf offering suspending the ma'amad service at Mincha? So Rav Ashi's response is that there is a Tanayitic opinion. This is where I got the confusion with Rabbi Yossi. The Tanayitic opinion of Rabbi Yossi is similar to yours. And then he brings in the Baraita. And the Baraita says, let's find out how he read. On any day on which there is an additional offering, a Musaf offering, there is a Ma'amad service. So then we have to, wait a minute, wait. What do you mean any day that there's an additional? Because we just learned that Shacharit, that there are times when you don't have the Ma'amad service attached. So the Gemara has to explain, wait a minute, what are we talking about? If it's talking about the morning service, Shacharit, the first Tana, and this is also a little confusion. We don't know what the first Tana said in the Baraita. The Gemara seems to know, but we haven't been given that information. So Art Scroll says the assumption is that the first opinion in this Baraita that they're bringing up with Rabbi Yossi is the same opinion as what Rabbi Akiva held. And Rabbi Akiva held that when a Musaf offering is brought, there are no Ma'amad services at Musaf, Mincha, and Nila. In response to this, Rabbi Yossi states here that a Musaf offering does not warrant suspension of all these Ma'amad services. So the first half of the Baraita that we don't know about had this view that nothing is suspended, whereas Rabbi Yossi is commenting on that. And he says that, in fact, you do have, it doesn't warrant suspension. But now we have to clarify what he's, the specific Ma'amad service, because if it was Shacharit, that doesn't make sense, because we learned that the Ma'amad service of Shacharit is held even when a Musaf offering is brought. Because while that's very rare, it's very rare that you're going to have Hallel, where you're not going to have Hallel, but you are going to have a Musaf offering. Usually they go together, but there is one case, Rosh Hashanah. On the Rosh Hashanah, we do not say Hallel, but we do have a Musaf offering. So there are times when you're going to say the Ma'amad service when you don't say Hallel. But you do have a Musaf offering. So, okay, so it can't be Shacharit. So maybe Rabbi Yossi is referring to the Ma'amad of Musaf. That too doesn't work, according to Art Scroll's explanation, because it's possible that the Musaf offering does not suspend even its own, because is it possible that it doesn't even suspend its own? Rather, Rabbi Yossi must refer to the Ma'amad of Mincha. But the wood offering suspends the Ma'amad of Mincha. So this explanation is not viable either. And they explain at the bottom, since Rabbi Yossi refers to any day on which a Musaf offering is brought, evidently he includes even those days that are also celebrated as wood festivals. Consequently, he cannot refer to the Ma'amad service of Mincha, which is sometimes suspended due to the wood offering. And then they give us a note here that as it seeks to define Rabbi Yossi's opinion, the Gemara assumes that Rabbi Yossi is responding to Rabbi Akiva's original view, but it also assumes that Rabbi Yossi agrees with Rabbi Akiva's view vis-a-vis wood offerings. So there's a lot of assumptions being made here that bringing these two different Baraitas, one of which we have to make assumptions of what they are. And in the end, the conclusion that's brought here is that rather that Rabbi Yossi must be referring to the Ma'amad service of Nila when he said, every day, Kol Yom Sheyesh Bo Musaf Yesh Bo Ma'amad. Any day on which there is a Musaf offering, there's a Ma'amad. It's really just talking about, his opinion is just Nila. Learn from this that according to Rabbi Yossi, though the Musaf offering suspends its own Ma'amad, it does not suspend a Ma'amad that is not its own. And we can learn from this. Okay, so so if you say, wait a minute, I thought you just said that Rabbi Yossi said that the Nila service, the Ma'amad of Nila service, is not suspended when it's Musaf. This is the Art Scroll explanation. Since it has been shown that according to Rabbi Yossi, the Musaf offering never suspends the Nila Ma'amad, it may be assumed that he accepts the principle that intrinsically the Musaf offering suspends only its own Ma'amad. In practice, this means that when no suspending factor other than the Musaf offering is present, such as Rosh Chodesh, on which no wood offering is brought, the Ma'amad service of both Mincha and Nila are held as usual. Okay, so but the point is that our confusion, and unfortunately Steinsaltz didn't help us here, was that there were certain assumptions that the Gemara was making that weren't explicit, and that we had to assume was going on in the background. Art Scroll helped us out with that. Steinsaltz made it really just more confusing. Okay, let's go to today. Today is 29, 29A. Let's just find where we started. Okay. I think, here we go. All right, I think we begin here. Oh, let me share the screen. Oh, I should have shared the screen before. It might have been a little more easy to figure out what was going on. Okay, so here we are. The Mishnah taught that on the 17th of Tammuz, the daily offering was nullified. The Gemara explains it's a tradition that it occurred on this date. Okay, so that was the daily offering. Also, we learned that I think we went through this whole piece here. We learned that the 17th of Tammuz, the city walls of Jerusalem were breached. Then we had a discussion about which, how that date was figured, because we do have in scripture different days from the first temple information and what tradition tells us about the second temple historical events. We also learned about Apostimos also burned a Torah scroll on the 17th of Tammuz. That was a tradition. Then we had that Menashe, an evil king, placed an idol in the sanctuary on the 17th of Tammuz, and that's what we concluded last time. We concluded with the two idols fall on each other, and according to Steinsaltz's explanation, the meaning of that was that this was a bad omen, that when one idol fell on the other and broke its hand, it was a sign that if you wanted to destroy the temple, I will give you a hand. That so it was a bad omen. According to the Art Scroll explanation, another tradition's explanation is that it won't be successful ultimately. The attempts to destroy the Jewish people and their ways, because the sign of the idol having its hand broken was a negative sign for the idol worshippers. Okay, so now we get to 9th of Av. 5 terrible things happened on the 9th of Av. And since Tisha B'Av was last week, we can learn all the things we should have done last week that we may not have done. Okay, so Tisha Av, Nigzar al avotenu shelo yikansu la'aretz. It was on Tisha B'Av that the Jewish people, the Israelites, learned they were not going to enter the land. Minalan. Where do we learn this? Let's figure it out. It's written, Vayihi b'chodesh harishon b'shana hashenit be'echad lechodesh hukam hamishkan. So on the first day of the first month in the second year, and now we're talking about, okay, we're talking about the first of Nisan, because the beginning of the year in the Torah of the calendar year is Nisan. So it was on the first of Nisan that in the second year the temple was erected. At the beginning of the second year, and then he sent the spies out right away, as it's written. And it came to pass in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th day of the month, that the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle of the testimony. So that's 20 days later. The cloud lifts. That's when he sends out the spies. They set forward from the mount of the Lord. Well, actually, wait, a little bit. And 3 days later, so the 20th of Nisan, the divine cloud lifts. Then they walk for 3 days, the people. Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina said, that very day they turned away from God by displaying their anxiety about leaving Mount Sinai, as it was written, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell to lusting, and the children of Israel wept on their part, and they said, would that we were given flesh to eat. And it's written that the Jews ate meat for an entire month. If one adds the first 20 days, an additional 3 days of journey, these are 23 days. Consequently, the subsequent month of 29 days of eating meat ended on the 22nd of Sivan. So in the meantime, the Jews received the Torah. They would receive the Torah on the 6th. Well, actually, that was the anniversary of that. Sorry about that. We're in the second year now. 22nd of Sivan, the meat eating ends. Then you have, after this, the Jews traveled to Chatzerot, where Miriam was afflicted with leprosy. And Miriam was shut out of camp for 7 days. So they wait for 7 days while Miriam gets healed. So that's now the 29th of Sivan, before traveling to Paran. And here's where they sent out the spies. So the 29th of Sivan, that's when he sends out the spies. And it's written, and they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. So now you got 40 days more that they were gone. And they came back, according to this, on the 9th of Av, because you've got Sivan, Tammuz, and then the beginning of Av. Now, the Gemara says, wait a minute, if you count this up, there's 40 days minus 1, which is 39. You've got the remaining days of Sivan, which I think were 2, entire month of Sivan, which was it 30? I wrote it down. Let's see, 2, 32. No, it would be 1 day of Sivan left over, then 30 days of Tammuz, then 8 days. So that'd be like 31 and 8 is 39. Okay, got it. Abaye says, but in this case, it worked out that the month of Tammuz was a full month. It was 30 days. Oh, wait, I'm getting everything messed up here. It was 2 days of Sivan. Entire month of Tammuz is 29 days. 8 days of Av. There we go up to 39. Okay, 2 plus 29 is 31, plus 8 is 39. However, in ancient times, there wasn't a fixed calendar. You determined the new month by having witnesses who saw the new moon come to the court, and they would accept the evidence, and then they would determine, okay, the new month starts today. And that year, it just so happened that Tammuz was a full month, because months are either 29 or 30 days, right? Because it takes 29 and a half days for the moon to circle the earth. So some months are 29, some are 30. And in this case, it was 30 days. So then it works out to 40 days, right? And you got 2 plus 30 plus 8 is 40 days. So the 40th day is when the spies returned and turned the people against against going to the land of Israel. As it says, all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. Rabbi said, Rabbi Yochanan said, that night was the night of 9th of Av. That was Tisha B'Av. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, "Atem bechitem bechiyah shel chinam." You cried for no reason at all, chinam, vainlessly, vain reason, vain reason. Va'ani kovei alechem bechiyah ledorot. But well, I'm going to give you a good reason to cry, and it's going to be for generations. So that was the 9th of Av. Okay. What else happened on the 9th of Av? Charav Abayit Barishona. The first temple was destroyed. Uvachodesh HaChamishi b'shiv'a lechodesh hi shnat sha esrei shana lemelech Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel ba Nebuzadaran Rav Tabachim Eved melech Bavel Yerushalayim v'yisrof et Beit Adonai. Okay, so this is what the Second Kings tells us. In the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, came to Jerusalem and he burnt the house of the Lord. And it's also written, but notice that this is the 7th day of the month, not the 9th day. Also, Jeremiah, who lived at the time of the destruction of the temple, and in the 5th month, the 10th day of the month, 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard who served the king of Babylonia, came into Jerusalem and he burnt the house of the Lord. So Jeremiah has it on the 10th, and the book of Kings, second book of Kings, has it on the 7th. And a Baraita resolves it. Vitanya, Iev Sharlo Mar B'Shiva. You can't say that it was burned on the 7th, because Jeremiah said it's the 10th. And you can't say that it was on the 10th, because you have this conflict between the verses. So how did it happen? So what their resolution is that the 7th they entered the temple itself, the sanctuary. They destroyed the everything, Shvi'i Shemini, they destroyed the temple, they desecrated on the 7th and the 8th. V'tisha samuch l'chashecha hitzitu bo et ha'ur. And then on the 9th day, when it was getting close to dark, they lit it on fire. And then it continued burning through the 10th. And V'hayinu de Amar Rabbi Yochanan il malei hayiti beoto hador. Had I been alive in that generation, lo kvativ ele ba'asiri, what I would have done is I would have said we should be observing the 10th of the month, because that's when most of the building was destroyed. But the Ramanan said, Adchalta de Puranuta Adifa, that we focus on the beginning of the tragedy. When a tragedy, when a catastrophe occurs, whenever the beginning of it is, that's when we mark it, because it's going to continue for some time, but we want to acknowledge the beginning. So that's how we ended up with the 9th day of the month. Well, we also learned in the Mishnah that the second temple was destroyed on the 9th day. Uvashniya minalan, where do we learn that? The Tanya Migalgalin Zachut Lom Zakai Vechova Liyom Chayav. And this is a very interesting principle. We don't have a scriptural source for the destruction of the temple because it happened after the scripture was canonized. And it did happen, and according to Josephus and some other sources, it was the 10th. It also fell very close to this 9th day. It was the 10th day of the month that the Romans burned the temple. But we have this tradition that good things happen on good days and bad things happen on bad days. And I found that even in my work with Shevet Yehuda, where he writes about this one tragic day there was a pogrom, and while the earlier sources that probably Shevet Yehuda was using to determine the events of that day, they don't mark the specialness of the day, that there's anything auspicious or inauspicious about the day that the pogrom occurred. But Shevet Yehuda says it happened on a holiday, a feast of Saint Magdalene. So he follows this idea that, bad things happen on inauspicious days. So that's where we get the idea that it should be that we should observe the 9th of Av as the day when the second temple was destroyed, because we already knew of these terrible things that happened on the 9th of Av. Now we get from another teaching, Baraita, Keshecharav Beit Hamikdash Varishona Oto Hayom Tisha B'Av Haya, Umotzei Shabbat Haya, Umotzei Shvi'it Hayta, Umishmarta Shel Yehoyariv Hayta. V'Leviim Hayu Omrim Shira Ve'omdim Al Duchna. The sages kind of double down on this, and they say not only was it the 9th of Av that the second temple was destroyed, but everything was the same. That year that the second temple was destroyed, it was the end of Shabbat, so it was the first day of the week. It was the year after a sabbatical year in both cases. It was the week of the priestly watch of Yehoyariv. The Levites were singing the song and standing on the platform. And they were singing a very inauspicious song, I guess, from Psalm 94. Vayashev alehem etonam uvara'atam yatzmitem. The Lord our God will cut them off. No, sorry. And he brought them upon their own iniquity, and he, God, will cut them off in their own evil. But you know what happened? V'lo yispiku lomar yatzmitem Hashem Elokeinu, and before ba'u nochrim v'chavshum v'chein b'shniya. And just as in the second temple, so in the first temple, just as they were about to get to the verse, God will cut them off, they were conquered. So it was very auspicious. The rabbis make it much more dramatic than, or make it very dramatic and compare the two destructions. We also learned that Nilkada Beitar. Beitar occurred in the year 135. In 135, there was another revolt against Rome. In some ways, even more powerful a revolt than the one during the second, which caused the second temple to be destroyed, because the forces were consolidated. In the second temple destruction period, that's what we're told that it was destroyed because of vain hatreds, unnecessary hatreds within the Jewish people, because the Jews were fighting with each other as much as they were fighting with the Romans, but not at the time of Beitar. Beitar was led by Bar Kokhba. We know that even Rabbi Akiva, who lived at the time, was a supporter and had called Bar Kokhba the Messiah, who was going to lead the Jewish people to liberation. It didn't happen. They were wiped out completely, and that leads to the next piece here of the complete destruction of Jerusalem. Nechrasha Ha'ir, the city was plowed over. This occurred a little bit after 135, but at this point the Romans were just fed up with fighting the Jews, and they made basically Jerusalem Judenrein. They changed the name of the city. It would change it to Aelia Capitolina. They changed the land of Israel's name from Israel to Palestine, Palestina. And they were, the destruction was vicious. And we learn in a Baraita that Kishacharav Tyrannus Rufus, Harasha et Hechal, Nigzara Gzera al Rabban Gamliel Hariga. So now we're told a little story. Rabban Gamliel, who was the leader of the community, the rabbinic community at that time, he was decreed to a death decree on him. Ba oto hegmon ve'amad b'veit midrash. How does he translate? A Roman official. Okay, a Roman official came and he announced to in the Beit Midrash where Rabban Gamliel was teaching. Ve'amar bal hachotem mitbakesh. We're looking for the guy with the prominent nose. He translates here as the man with the nose, but the notes here, the art scroll translate as a prominent nose, meaning that this important person, prominent individual, is being sought. Rabban Gamliel heard it. Azal tasha minayhu. He went into hiding. But the Roman official found him, and Amarle, imatzil nalach meitit li la'alma da'ate. this is just kind of interesting. We know that Judaism was attractive to many Romans. And maybe this is why eventually Christianity became so prominent, because they were much more open to proselytizing. Because there was this interest, I think, in probably in this notion of monotheism. And so this, while this is obviously a mythological story or a fable, it's probably based on true information that there were Romans who were attracted to Judaism. And this guy said, if I save you, will you bring me into the world to come? Amar lehein. Rabbi Gamliel says yes. So he says to him, Ishtabali, Ishtabalo. He says, you got to swear to me. And he says, okay. Salek igra, and the Roman official goes up to the roof. Nafel umit. He jumped off the roof and killed himself. Ugmir, and there's this rule among the Romans, according to this story, Dechi gazri gezerata umit chad minayhu. When an important Roman official would die after a decree had been made against someone, against a group, right? They would cancel the decree because it looked, they saw it as a very negative augur. So they would cancel the decree. So in this case, when the guy committed suicide, or in their case, he fell off the roof and he dies, that was enough for the Roman officials to cancel the decree about Rabban Gamliel. Yatzta bat kol ve'amra oto hegmon mizuman l'chayei olam haba. The divine voice emerged and said that officer is designated, is welcomed into the world to come. So it was a worthwhile bargain for him. Now there's another story, and this is a little more well known. Tanu Rabbanan, Mishacharav Abayit Barishona, Nidkabtsu kitot shel parchei kehuna, umefatchot hacheichel biyadan. That a group of young, it's interesting that it's young priests here. Young priests held onto the keys of the temple, and they saw that it was being destroyed. And so they ascended to the roof, because everything was on fire. So they went up to the roof, and they said to God, they called out to God, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, Ho'il v'lo zachinu lehiyot giz barim nemanim, because we haven't done a good job. We have not been faithful. Here he translates as treasurers, but we haven't been faithful stewards, really, of your temple. Yihyu maftechot mesurot lecha. We're giving back the keys. You gave it to you gave human beings control over this holy space, but we haven't done a very good job, because look what's happening to our community and to the temple itself. So obviously it's on our head, and therefore we don't have the right to maintain these keys anymore, and we give them back to you. So what did they do? Zrakin klape mala. They threw the keys up in the air. V'yatzta ayin pisat yad, and an image of a palm reached out the kiblatan mehem, and they took the keys. The heim kaftzu v'naflu l'toch ha'ur, and then they gave themselves up and jumped into the fire. And so that story, here is telling us that the keys to the temple still exist. It's just that God has taken them back, and we're waiting for the day when God will trust humanity, or at least the Jewish people, to return that responsibility. And this is what Yeshayahu was lamenting when he said in chapter 22, Masa ge chizayon, the burden of the valley of vision. Ma lach efo ki alit kulach legagot. What ails you now that you have all gone up to the roofs, right? That's in the story, they go up to the roofs. Chuot meleya, ir homia, kirya aliza. You that were full of uproar, tumultuous city, a joyous town, your slain are not slain with the sword, nor dead in battle, right? You didn't die in battle, you gave yourselves up by jumping off the roof. Af behakadosh baruch hu ne'emar, mikarkar kir visho'a el hahar. Even God says, again in the verses in chapter 22 in Isaiah, it is a day of trouble, of trampling, and of confusion for the Lord of hosts in the valley of vision, a shouting over walls and a cry to the mountains. And I think this is important because I mentioned this the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, of this interesting teaching, or the distinction between the Book of Lamentations and the Rabbinic Midrashim. The Book of Lamentations, which describes the destruction of the first temple, God is the enemy. The authors of the Book of Lamentation make it very clear that God is angry with the people, and God is resentful, and the destruction is to discipline the people for their infidelity. And there's no sense that God is really feeling bad about what God's doing. It's that it's a sense of vengeance for the betrayal by the Jewish people. It's the rabbis of the Midrash, and here too you see this sentiment that God actually was crying. God was so sad at the destruction and was sorry that it had to come about. It was necessary, but God is weeping at the destruction. And here you see that same sentiment in this understanding of the verse from Isaiah 22. Next teaching, here's a principle that we Misha nichnas Av mimatin b'simcha. When the month of Av begins, joy decreases. One decreases acts of rejoicing, and that's followed through in the halacha that people don't eat meat or wine when Av begins. There's a 9-day period of not drinking wine, because wine and meat are signs of joyfulness. And we'll see in a moment, people don't cut their hair. There are acts of mourning. But Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Samuel Bar Shelat, said in the name of Rav that the opposite is also true. Just as we limit joyfulness as Av enters, kach misha nichnas adar marbin besimcha. And that's we even sing it. Misha, 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 nichnas adar marbin besimcha. One who enters into the month of Adar, the month of Purim, we do increase joy. There's lots of joyfulness that increases. Now, Rav Papa takes this notion of decreasing joy wider than just ritual. He says, in that case, you should follow this ruling in all ways. Therefore, if you have to go to court in the month of Av, and it's a Gentile court, or the Gentile is your antagonist in this case, you know what? Don't go to court, because that bad thing, you're going to lose the case. Doria Mazaleh. In the month of Av, Jews' fortune is bad, and instead have the court case pushed off to Adar when you're probably you got a better chance of winning the case. Okay, we continue. Sigmara mentions a couple of other statements in the name of the same sages mentioned above. First, it cites a verse that is referring to Babylonian exile. Here we have this Rav Yehuda, again, in the name of Rav, who says, he takes the verse, Latate lechem acharit v'tikva, to give you a future and a hope. That is referring to palm trees and garments of linen, which are long-lasting and bring benefit as long as they exist. And with regard to Isaac's comment about Jacob, when he blessed Jacob, and he said he thought it was Esau, Karech sadeh asher beracho Hashem. He said, because his mother had put Esau's garments on him, so he says, "Oh wow, it smells of the field," and so the smell of my son is the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. And according again to this Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, Kereach sadeh shel tapuchim. It's the smell of the field of apples. Let's see. Well, okay, it seems to be a local type of apple that smelled really nice. Okay, keep going here. The Mishnah, back to the Mishnah. All right. During the week, Shabbat Shechal Tisha B'Av, Lihiyot B'tocha, Asurin Lesaper Ulechabes. During the week of the 9th of Av, you are forbidden from cutting hair or laundering clothes. Now we have to understand, what do we mean by laundering and what do we mean by week of Tisha B'Av. Rav Nachman said, Lo shanu ela lechabes v'lilbosh. That means you can't launder and wear clean clothes before the 9th of Av. However, lechabes ulahaniach mutar. You could wash your clothes and set them aside until after Tisha B'Av. But Rav Sheshet disagrees. Afilu lechabes ulahaniach asur. You can't do that. You can't wash your clothes on that week of Tisha B'Av, right before Tisha B'Av, and put them aside. No washing that week. Ve'amar Rav Sheshet, he also said, Teda devatli katzrei devei Rav. Know that I am incorrect because the launderers of Rav's household were idle. They didn't work that week, which shows that laundering in and itself is prohibited. Mativ Rav Hamnuna. Now, Rav Hamnuna raised an objection against Rav Nachman's ruling about washing. You can launder to put aside. You can't launder to wear the week of Tisha B'Av. And he said, B'chamishi mutarim mibnei kevod Shabbat. It says in the Mishnah on Thursday, these actions are permitted in deference to Shabbat. So you're permitted, according to this teaching in the Mishnah, you can wash in deference to Shabbat. But, and Rav Nachman had said you can wash all throughout the week and then just put them away so you have clean clothes after Tisha B'Av. But the Mishnah makes it very clear that you're permitted to wash for the honor of Shabbat. But to what is he talking about? What are we speaking of? What actions? If we say that it's permitted to launder and to wear clothing immediately, what deference to Shabbat is there in wearing a garment on Thursday? Because he said, okay, so how could that be deference to Shabbat? That doesn't make any sense. So you've got to say it has to do something with being about Shabbat. Rather, it must mean that one can wash and set aside the garment until Shabbat. And this washing is permitted only on Thursday. However, during the rest of the week, it is prohibited. So Rav Nachman was suggesting, if Tisha B'Av is, let's say, Tuesday, you could wash on Monday or Sunday and then put it aside. And he says, no. The teaching in the Mishnah, according to Rav Hamnuna, clarifies that it's only specifically regarding honoring Shabbat that you can put stuff aside, that you can wash it and then put it aside, and then it's only for the sake of Shabbat. But now the Gemara rejects this. Actually, the Mishnah permits one to launder and wear a garment immediately on Thursday, and this ruling is referred to one who has only one shirt. Okay, so now we have another qualification. Yes, you can wash and wear if you only have one garment, which obviously some people have. They had one clothes, they washed that day, and then they'd wear it. So this laundering is also considered in deference to Shabbat, because if one does not wash his shirt now on Thursday, he won't have the opportunity to do so later, as the Mishnah is referring to a case when the 9th of Av occurs on a Friday. Okay, so that's also another factor we have to put in here. Tisha B'Av occurs on Friday, therefore washing on Thursday is okay to wear so that you have something clean for Shabbat, because you won't be able to wash on 9th of Av. Rav Ashi said that Rabbi Yochanan said, one who has only one shirt is permitted to launder it on the intermediate days of a festival. That's also another rule, that you're not supposed to do laundry on festivals, on Chol HaMoed, unless you only have one shirt, unless you have one garment. It was also stated that Rabbi Binyamin said, that Rabbi Elazar said, they taught that it is prohibited only to launder and to wear immediately. However, if one launders to set aside, this is permitted. So here's again that other opinion. You could wash right, that you, regarding Chol HaMoed, you can wash to put aside after the holiday, so you have clean clothes after the holiday. That's okay, but the washing and wearing was only that it's prohibited to wash and wear immediately. Only Rabbi Yochanan disagreed in the case of a person only has one piece of clothing. Rabbi Elazar seems to be saying if you have more than one clothing, then you could you're not allowed to wash and wear, but you are allowed to wash and put aside. So now the Gemara raises an objection about this. It's prohibited to launder before 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, even if one intends to set aside the clothes until after the 9th of Av. So this Baraita is, again, disagreeing with the opinion of above. You're not allowed to launder before the 9th of Av, even to set it aside. But there's a piece here, our fine laundering, what's called gichutz in Babylonia, is like plain laundering in Eretz Yisrael. Our plain washing in Babylonia is not really considered laundering at all, and it's permitted. So you have so that's another factor. So laundering can be, there are different meanings of laundering. And I don't know if this is so, because Steinsaltz doesn't explain it, but I'm guessing like, if laundering is just putting something in water and then taking it out, that's not what's considered real washing. Laundering, gichutz, is very involved. It uses detergents, it's scraping, and here they even explain here in the bottom. Here's the note. The early commentaries deal at length with the various aspects of washing clothes mentioned here in the Gemara. Some explain that when the Gemara says that our fine laundering is like their plain laundering, it means that although plain laundering is prohibited in the week of 9th of Av in Eretz Yisrael, it's permitted during that period in Babylonia where only fine laundering is prohibited. So there's different types of laundering. And with regard to linen garments, also, the process of fine laundering does not apply to them because you'd probably destroy it, I think. It takes too much work to clean linen, and they don't have the substantiveness of woolen garments. In any case, this Baraita indicates that laundering clothes and setting them aside is prohibited, and it's therefore a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Nachman. We go on. Shalach Rav Yitzhak bar Giore mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. Afal pisha amru klei fishtan ein bahem mishum gihutz. Aval asur lelovshan b'Shabbat shechal tisha b'av l'hiyot b'tocha. So he says, even though the sages said that with regard to linen garments, fine laundering doesn't apply to them, it's still prohibited to wear them during washed linen during the week of 9th of Av. And now we get into the question about, well, when are these restrictions imposed? Is it the 9th of Av itself? Is it the days before? Is it the entire month? Is it days afterwards? Lo shanu elo lefanav, aval la'acharav mutar. They taught that these prohibitions apply only before the 9th of Av, washing clothes and cutting hair, but after the fast, laundering is permitted. Shmuel said, afilu la'acharav nam yasor. Even after the 9th of Av, it's forbidden to do these things. Meitvei, Shabbat shechal tisha b'av. So here we have an objection. The Shabbat Shabbat here means week. The week in which the 9th of Av occurs, it is prohibited to cut one's hair and to launder clothes. But on Thursday, these actions are permitted in deference to Shabbat. How so? We're talking about a case where the 9th of Av occurs on a Sunday, so it's permitted to launder the entire preceding week. So here's and here they explain. If the 9th of Av occurs on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, on the days before 9th of Av, laundering is prohibited. But after the fast, it's permitted. So if it falls on Tuesday, you can't wash your clothes on Monday. Or Wednesday, you can't wash your clothes on Monday or Tuesday. That's the week before the Tisha B'Av. If the ninth of Av though occurs on a Friday, it is permitted to launder on Thursday in deference to Shabbat. So you have clean clothes on Shabbat. And if for whatever reason one did not launder on Thursday of that week, you are permitted to launder on Friday from Mincha onward. So the end of the Tisha B'Av, if it fell on Friday because you're getting close to Shabbat, in that case, you're permitted to launder, again, for the sake of Shabbat. But not everybody agrees. Abai, and some say it was Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, says that these sages cursed those who did this. They didn't like that. You shouldn't wash at the end of Tisha B'Av just for the sake of Shabbat. So now it continues with the Baraita. If the ninth of Av occurs on a Monday or on a Thursday, 3 people are called to read from the Torah as during a regular week. And one of them recites the portion of the prophets, because we have a Haftarah on Tisha B'Av. There's a Haftarah that's read from Isaiah. If the ninth of Av occurs on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday, then we don't break the reading up into 3. We just have one person read, and that same person reads the Haftarah. So this is a little bit different. Usually we have on Shabbat, we have 7 readers. We break the Torah portion up into 7. And then we go back, unless it's a special day, we go back, we read the last few verses of that last Aliyah. And the person who has the Aliyah, that 8th Aliyah, is the Haftarah reader. In this case, it's actually the person who has the 3rd Aliyah to the Torah is the one who recites the Haftarah, unless it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And then according to this, just whoever reads the Torah also recites the Haftarah. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Actually, 3 people are called to read no matter what day of the week it is. And one of them, usually it's understood the last Aliyah, reads the Haftarah. In any case, the Baraita apparently presents a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Shmuel, as it is clearly stated that one is permitted to launder during the weekdays following the 9th of Av. Remember, he said it's after 9th of Av. You still observe some of these customs of mourning. Shmuel could have said to you, this is simply a dispute between Tanaim, that there was earlier opinions. Shmuel's an Amora, and this is earlier opinions that were split. People were split about eating and about washing, and that I hold the more restrictive view. Let's jump down because we're running out of time here, and I want to get to this last piece where we have the 3 opinions. We have a Baraita about observing mourning rites during this period of Tisha B'Av. According to this view, according to Rebbe Meir, again, he's a Tana, so he's an early sage, the mourning rites begin on Rosh Chodesh, the 1st of Av, and continue until the 9th. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the entire month of Av, we observe mourning. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says they are prohibited only during that week. So just a few days before, and it seems like the few days after, as we'll get to in a moment, after the fast. It's that whole week around the Tisha B'Av. Rabbi Yochanan said, all 3 of these Tanaim, interestingly enough, derive their opinions from just one verse, but they drew different conclusions. Because the verse in Hosea says, I will cause all her mirth to cease, her festival, her new moon, and her Shabbat. The one who said that these activities are prohibited from the new moon until after the fast, Rabbi Meir, derives from the phrase, from her festival, from the Chag, that acts of mirth and joy and rejoicing are prohibited from the new moon, because that's considered to be like a festival. But Rabbi Yehuda learned it from the word chodesh. Chadsha, from the word chadsha, her new moon. that it's the entire month that the mourning rites continue. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel learned it from the term Shabbata, which can also mean week. And with regard to that, Rava said the halacha, then Rava determines the halacha. The halacha is in accordance with both the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Meir. How does he put the two points of view together? They're both leniencies. He follows the leniency from both opinions. And he had to learn it from both of them because this is what he learned from each. Had he taught us only that the halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Meir, I would have thought that the morning practices are obligatory even from Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, Rava teaches us that the halacha is in accordance also with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that the restrictions of mourning do not apply until the week of 9th of Av. So it's not from 1 Av to 9 Av, it's just from the few days before 9th of Av. And had he taught us only that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, I would have said that the prohibitions apply even after the fast, until the end of the week, because Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel held that it was the whole week surrounding Tisha B'Av. But according to Rabbi Meir, the prohibitions only apply until the 9th of Av itself. And so Rava learns that the restrictions, the mourning, is limited to a few days of the week of Tisha B'Av and conclude on Tisha B'Av. All right, and that is the conclusion of this as far as we got. Next week, what we are going to do is, and I'll send out the time for everybody because I have to do an unveiling at 11 o'clock, our usual time for class. So what I'll do is I will have, so we'll meet maybe at the synagogue around 11:30-ish. I mean, or we can do it on Zoom if people feel more comfortable doing on Zoom. If they don't feel comfortable coming into the synagogue and eating without masks. But so people can decide whether to do it on Zoom or on or live in person. And we'll finish the last daf. I'd love for people to share a thought or two about what they learned from learning the whole Tanit, like what passages did they find really meaningful and what do they like the best, and say something about it. So we'll share a little Torah, and then we will say the special prayer that we say when we finish a section. So it should be a lot of fun. If I get crap from various powers that be at the synagogue that we're not allowed, even though all of us who are studying this are vaccinated, that we can't eat in the synagogue, then maybe we'll do it at my house. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Just come to my house. There's aren't that many of us, and we'll have a special celebration. So, okay. Very good, Yasher Koch. Good to see you, Nate. And we will see you during the week or on next.
Yeah, I'll see you on Thursday.
Okay, take care.
Have a great day. Congratulations to them.